May I start off with just asking you a little bit about your character in this play?
He's, well, he kind of put me on the spot really, because it's not something that's really right there on the page. So it's one of those parts that you could play lots of different ways. When Henry Fonda played it famously in the film, it was only necessary for him to be Henry Fonda. And I don't want to minimize that, because it took me 10 years of continual work before I learned how to make it look as though I was just being myself. But it seemed to me that there might be more to it than just simply being a democratic, candid, fair-minded voice of reason. So I think this character is passionate about justice. He has a very mathematical, forensic mind because he's an architect. And he just spots flaws, what he thinks are flaws in the evidence presented at the trial, even though it looks like an open and shut case. I think he's a very moral man and loves his country's constitution. Who wouldn't? It's a wonderful document. And so he's very fixed on the idea of reasonable doubt.
So as an actor, how long does it take you to actually sort of get into that character in particular, and then obviously put your own interpretation on it as well?
It's a process of osmosis, of absorption, you know. It comes in bit by bit. You have to have a great script. You have to start with a wonderful script, and this is a magnificently crafted and written play. And so it's just absorbed, you know. It just comes into you, and then a lot comes from the other characters. So because they are also in a great play, their thought processes are very clear, and so literally it just grows.
So it's quite an organic process.
It's a totally organic process, yes.
And I've just seen some of the rehearsals. As an observer, it felt very much like that. That even though you are now in preview mode and coming up to opening, there are still tweaks and it still changes as you go along.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. I mean, even if there are little tiny instinctive things, you know, because especially as you've got 12 people on the stage, you know, a move might be slightly different. You might catch somebody's eye and they might go like that, and you know what they are thinking, and or somebody might go, and you think, oh, right, okay, fine. And it's all to do with the character, you know, and it just makes and the audience pick up this kind of stuff. The audiences, we've only had 2 so far, but the audiences have been phenomenal. They just love it. You know, the instant we get the blackout at the end, so far anyway, we've had people cheering and people standing up, you know.
Fingers crossed that will continue. This is your first time performing here at the Birmingham Repertory Theatre.
My first time here, yeah.
What are your impressions? Obviously we've got a new revamped theatre at the moment, and audiences are coming back into the great space that's been created.
Yes, I mean, I think the ethos here is fantastic, and the sense of bringing art to the community and bringing the community in, I think it's really wonderful, in spite of the way I was misquoted in the local press.
Oh, were you?
Yes, of course, but then we know about the press, don't we?
Brand new rehearsal rooms, you've been rehearsing in them for 5 weeks. The facilities have come on so much. As an actor, how important is that, having that sort of support system away from the main stage, which obviously you will end up on?
Well, oddly enough, as long as you've got a room to work in and somewhere to concentrate in that's where you don't have a lot of noise or obvious distractions like cold and so on, it doesn't really matter where you are. I mean, generally we rehearse in church halls, and so yes, this is a nice space here. But you just need a room that's approximately the same size. I'll try that again. The same size as the stage.
Which you have, obviously.
Which we have, yes. But then, of course, we've got this incredible set. And if ever a set was worthy of an award, it's this. It's just absolutely incredible.
This set has been made here in Birmingham at the Repertory Theatre. That in itself must be an immense proud moment for you as being a Brummie. It's going to travel with you as well. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I've been, at the end of our first technical rehearsal, I mean, I'm not one for making speeches and gestures and so on, but at the end of our first technical rehearsal, I just had to call everybody together and thank the technical staff here, because normally a technical rehearsal, which is the first time you get all the bits and the lights and the sound and all the doors opening and closing, the sinks, all the little things that have to come together, you can expect sometimes to go on past midnight putting all these little bits together. We were finished by 6 o'clock in the evening, that is. And I just had to say that the technical crew here were just utterly magnificent, and they remain so. So it does your heart good to know that that's going on.
May I move on to a little bit about Birmingham? Obviously very proud of you being a Brummie and taking the Birmingham name everywhere. How connected are you to Birmingham and the region now? Well,
I'm not so connected now as I was, because both my parents have died, and it still feels very odd if I'm going north to drive past Junction 7, which is where I would come off to visit them. But there's an enormous part of my heart still here. And the first morning I had off, I went up Broad Street, which is utterly, completely different. I wouldn't have known where I was. But once I'd got into Victoria Square, everything was familiar. And I went and looked for some of my old stamping grounds, you know. And it was nice to see that they were still there.
What's your fondest memory then of being a young person here and a student, I suppose, a drama student as well?
I think the fondest memory was before I went to drama school, I worked in Hockley at a place called the Hockley Chemical Company Limited, which sounds very good in a Birmingham accent, by the way, the Hockley Chemical Company Limited. And I can't find it. I don't think it's there now. I've walked up there to try and find it. But then I would get the bus as fast as I could into the centre of town and go to the Trocadero pub, which at that time, I don't know what it's like now, but at that time it was a sort of a hub of very arty people, and so there were a lot of actors in there, and my old drama teacher was in there. There were musicians in there, and it hadn't changed since Victorian times, you know. So I had to go and seek that out and see if that was still there. I went and looked at the old Rep and the Crown pub on the corner, which is another pub we used to go to, just to see if these places were still there, you know.
So obviously very fond memories.
Yeah.
It has changed the city,
yeah.
From an acting point of view and an arts and creativity point of view. Do you see differences? Is there anything that you've notable changes?
Well, there's a lot more money in it. You know, I mean, look at this place, and so clearly there is funding, and people want to foster the arts here. You've got Symphony Hall next door, which is recognised to be one of the finest in the world. That, I think, is absolutely glorious.
And of course the new library next door as well.
Yeah, I'm not so fond of the new library, to tell you the truth.
You're not?
No, I mean, I'm sure it's a magnificent facility. I think it looks a bit like a neon licorice all sort.
Have you had a chance to walk around it?
No, I haven't, no. So to be fair, it's probably offers more than just its exterior.
So maybe it could sway you once you do have a walk around.
Yeah,
do you intend to?
Yes. Oh, yes.
In terms of taking this production, it's very much a Birmingham-made production, and it will go across the UK and then end up in the West End. Do you feel as if there's a little bit of ownership there at all? Because obviously...
Of course, yes. I mean, Birmingham is the second city, and it's where I first fell in love with the creative arts, you know, through my school and through a magnificent teacher called Tom Knowles and another one called Alan Hill. And then watching every production at the old Rep and at the old Alex. And then in between I would go to Stratford and watch the productions there. So a lot of my early yearnings were centred here. I mean, I could never have believed that I'd be heading up a company like this prior to going to the West End when I was here when I was 18 years old. So yes, it is lovely to have that sense of looking back and saying, you know, cheers Birmingham.